Katy and I are going to talk about fraud. Richard did a really good job in the Alta section, um, laying out all the economic impacts. We're going to go more into detail, and I have never seen a clicker that looks like this. What is the green button? Okay, cool. So my first slide, I'm very proud of that, and AI did not help me make that thing go in a circle. So every time you close a real estate transaction for a bank and it's secured by a mortgage, it may be subject to state and federal laws. You're a part in this machine, whether you like it or not, if you're doing a real estate closing. I would even expand that to say, even if you're doing a cash closing, you're depositing the funds into a bank, you're going to be subject to it. So unfortunately, about 15 years ago, I bumped into two transactions or two situations where I got to talk to the FBI an extensive. One was your sort of impersonator fraud group, and the FBI came trumping in and said, "We want to see this file and all this." And I said, "Okay." Anyway, it was impersonator fraud before we had so much impersonator fraud at the time. The second one was a little more intense, and it was a big developer in Memphis who went bankrupt and left a lot of money on the table, several millions of dollars in the hole, and he didn't make any friends, to say it lightly. And so they wanted to see basically all his files and ask questions about it. So I would rank it up there with my recent prostate surgery as far as fun. But unfortunately, that's the business we're in. What I will say is Darrin's 3Ds, okay? You should document your file. You should fully disclose to the lender and all the parties everything that's going on. And you should always be ready to defend what you did in any real estate transaction that you participate in, okay? So keep that in mind. When we're talking about mortgage fraud, which is the first part of this deal, mortgage fraud is kind of a misnomer. There is no statute on mortgage fraud. What it is a series of other federal statutes making false statements to banks. Bank fraud is its own little criminal act, and then wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. And so I have a lot of hobbies. I love golf, fishing, hunting, and I also love to read the FBI.gov website on these issues. And so I hope everybody got the handout that we gave you. If you don't, we've got more on that table. But a lot of these slides are too hard to read up on these screens or whatever. And hopefully when you go home, y'all read them in more details. But these are all actual people recently most of them are within the last year, some of them within the last month, some of them within the last week, of people who are involved in some of these frauds. This first one was really just a vanilla defalcation title company guy who basically decided that he would use his escrow funds to pay his personal credit card accounts and all that. It always baffles me that people think that they're going to get away with this or whatever, but the theory I've always heard is they always think they're going to put it back, but they don't. So there's your first one. So what's mortgage fraud? It's incorrect information and deliberate concealment. Those are typically inflated appraisals, stolen identities, straw buyers, false loan applications, fraudulent supporting loan documents, and kickbacks. And frequently they're all intermingled in these deals. You got fraud for property and you got fraud for profit. Property is basically, think of it as false loan applications. We don't see a lot on that because that's usually just one person. Fraud for profit are most of the schemes where people are trying to make a bunch of money, steal a bunch of money. And so that's what we'll see. So I'm going to go through the FBI's mortgage fraud schemes, the most common ones. The first one is illegal flipping. I guess that insinuates that there's also legal flipping, but about half of the mortgage fraud cases for the FBI involve flipping in some form or fashion. Okay. And so flipping has really become, it's part of our industry. I mean, we got TV shows about it, flip this house and all this stuff, and people use the word flip or whatever. But the illegal part comes in, first of all, I'll say this, in a normal functioning real estate market, okay? Flips with significant amounts of increase should really not occur. And when I say that, it's because two willing buyers should reach a fair market value under normal circumstances. So you shouldn't be able to go out the next day and make substantially more money. Okay, that's how I look at it. So your ears should perk up if someone's flipping a property and they've done nothing to it. Now, these people who get an inherited house, it's dilapidated, they fix it up and they sell it 6 months later for more money or something like that. Those are trending towards your legal flips. But when you're going from basically here to here and you're making a bunch of money, then you should be aware that there could be something going on. And the other thing I would say is this: if you've got somebody who's just routinely flipping properties and they're making a bunch of money every time, that can be a true red flag that something is actually going on. You need to be careful about it. So, any of y'all ever bump into the home investors people? When I was doing closings in Memphis, home investors basically franchised the whole flipping concept, I guess you could say. And they're a good organization. They sell franchises, and they in the one I was familiar with, they frequently went out and found like people who had died or whatever, dilapidated properties, and they fixed them up, and they did that. They had their own lenders and all that. Anyway, this particular one I found when I was looking through this stuff, this Charles Carrier guy, have y'all heard of him? He's out of Dallas. And so this cat was a franchisee of home investors. And he was, I have to look at this one because I had he was basically promising 9% returns, and he was collecting money from his people, and basically either not recording the deeds or selling the properties multiply and all that. Anyway, he ended up costing them about $40 million. Home investors ended up suing him as well under the franchise agreement, and he's going to jail as well. Slamming. Slamming is when you put a whole bunch of mortgages on a property in a short period of time. Ideally, if you're down dating title before closing, you should pick up on that. I don't know if y'all remember 10, 12, 15 years ago, there was a guy in Little Rock, around the Little Rock Country Club, who put several mortgages on his house. But that'd be an example of it. We would like to see you do a down date if you're past 10 days on residential, and ideally on commercial, you should be down dating at closing or as close as possible. So found this guy June 2nd of 2025. He's a home builder in Texas. And sometimes you just wonder, like, how do these people get away with this? You know, this guy's building, he's got multiple houses he's building with construction loans. And what he does is he sells different people the same property and then gets his buddies to go out and then remortgages them and take the money out of it. And you're sitting there going, how long is that going to last? If I'm buying a house and you're supposed to be building it for me, and then you're selling it to somebody else and putting another mortgage on it. I mean, you know, you just have to wonder about these folks. But anyway, it happened. He's going to jail, most likely. Short sale fraud. I have a whole category, what we call distressed property frauds. And so what happens, unfortunately, is people get in distress situations where they're defaulting on their mortgage and they're scrambling around, they're trying to make ends meet or whatever. Short sale fraud is also called flopping. And what goes on there is you owe 400 grand, you negotiate, you say, I can't pay it. Instead of foreclosing, let's do a short sale. You negotiate a short sale. In the meantime, the guy who's negotiating the short sale goes out and negotiates another sale, makes a profit because he's lied to the short sale person, and then he makes the profit, he keeps the profit, pays the short sale person that, and fraudulent. And you're sitting there going, well, that doesn't happen, Darrin. Oh yeah, it does. These folks made a business out of hoodwinking lenders on short sales. And if you look on the FBI's website, you'll find many of those. We are not quite into the distressed property world that we were in years past, but what's y'all's vote on year over year foreclosures? Increase, decrease, how much? Increase is correct. How much? Year over year, we're 18% up on foreclosures. Okay. Last year it was like 5-6%. So we're trending higher. That means we're trending higher for these type frauds. Silent seconds. One time I had a person say it's a forgivable mortgage. Okay. There's no such thing as a forgivable mortgage. The idea or what happens is you're hoodwinking the lender, right? But you're saying, okay, well, we'll jack up the sales price and then we'll take it out. We'll make it look like it's selling for, if it's really worth 100, we'll make it look like it's selling for 130. We'll tell the lender it's worth 130, and then we'll take a second mortgage out with the seller who has no intent of ever collecting on it. Hopefully those are more of a thing of the past, but they were very common in the 05, 06 time period. Double HUDs. This is an interesting term. It's kind of dated, I guess. Does anybody know what a HUD is anymore? Anyway, the first time I heard about this, and Stacy and some of our Memphis friends all know this lady. Her name was Sharon Anderson. And at the beginning, she was indicted for given the actual lender a settlement statement that said all the right numbers. On the backside, she'd do another settlement statement that had all the fake numbers. I know it's hard to believe that somebody would do that, but that's what a double HUD was, telling the lender one thing, the real deal was back here on the backside. And so frequently in these investigations and stuff like that, they'll come in and they'll investigate, and then they'll find other stuff, and then they'll negotiate a deal with the person. And that's what they did with Sharon. She ended up, even worse, being a thief as far as stealing client funds. And so she ended up going to jail for like 20 months. Bad actor. The government, again, these are all FBI.gov public statements, but noted that she was basically just doing it for greed. She had a yacht, she had places down in Florida, all kinds of stuff. So forgery and identity theft, we've been talking about that lately. It seems every day. And I just sent Stacy an email or one that came out day before yesterday in Memphis, where these folks had forged 37 different quitclaim deeds, which means for us locally in Memphis, we've got to go back and figure and doctor up our title plans to protect ourselves. I know y'all are all dealing with that as well. But quite honestly, this has become the most common of these forgeries that we deal with right now. So I had Katy's going to talk more about the IDs and all that stuff on the backside, the examination side, but I mean, if we could just get to what they have up there in the casino, have y'all been in there where you stick the card in and they scan you? I don't know where all that information is going. But I mean, I mean, if we could get to that point where you could do that, you just walk in and say, put your driver's license in, you can walk in the back and do your closing. I think that'll be the answer. But anyway, we'll see. Foreclosure rescue, that falls under the same distressed property deal. What we're doing here is, um, again, the person is underwater, and I'm sympathetic to them, but what happens is some person comes along, some company or whatever, and promises them either a number of different ways that they do it. A lot of times they'll say, if you'll deed me your property, then we'll go out and market it and sell it. Okay. Well, they do try to go market it and sell it, but they take the money, they default on the loan, and they still get foreclosed on. That's the biggest, most common version of this fraud. So they also charge them fees and stuff like that. Up front can do that. The spin on that one is they also do mortgage modifications. And so they'll offer to negotiate with the lender, kind of that same short sale tort scenario, or they'll get the people to give them money, which is so ironic because these people are already broke, but yet people can come up with money because they believe that they're going to get these modification programs. Some of them are just complete frauds. And a lot of times they don't ever negotiate anything. The builder bailout condo conversion, this was probably more common in when builders were going broke. And I closed and did a lot of transactions through the whole spectrum of the builders start, where everybody with a pickup truck became a builder and they could go out and do closings or whatever. Well, a lot of those people were going broke. A lot of them had their own little subdivisions and they couldn't get them to sell. The builder bailout condos fraud is basically the builder goes out and gets some of his buddies to theoretically buy these houses at X amount of prices. And then on the backside, they give them kickbacks or give them the money on the outside. So it looks like this subdivision is successful and they've got people living in it and all that, when reality is they don't. So straw buyers, these are just fraudsters that basically cooperate with the fraudsters, and they go out and they either buy property, same thing basically, other than you really have to wonder, like, how many times can you really get away with that? But if you get away with it once or twice, the straw buyer gets paid off. They're usually using fake IDs and stuff like that as well. But chunking is when you have these real estate. If you stay up too late, like I do a lot of times, you're going to bump into all these real estate people. I don't see them, many of them as there used to be, but they're still out there. But they come on these seminars about how to get rich quick and real estate type deals. And I don't want to poo-poo all of them because some of them seem a little legit. But the idea is on these seminars is these people talk folks into paying sometimes large sums of money. I'm going to show you on this next slide. $3,000 to $5,000 just to get into their seminars to tell you how to buy property and flip it or do whatever else. But that's the idea. So these folks, this is March 16th of 2026. This is fresh stuff. This one is, these people were indicted, so it's not over with, but there's the whole scam. And the FBI, I think they'd found like 13 victims so far, but they think there's more. These people were basically doing, they had a variety of their seminars, what they called them, forgot they had this funny name for one of them. Anyway, They were charging people $2,000 to $5,000 on their real estate investment deals. Some of them, they were actually promising them that they were going to get actual property, but not giving it to them. And then ironically, we were taking a lot of this money and, buying cars and Mercedes and flying private jets and doing all this other stuff. So those people are out there. This is a home equity conversion mortgage. Y'all know what those are, right? Reverse mortgages. This is probably one of the lowest of the lows when it comes to mortgage fraud issues. But what they're doing there is they're going out and getting elderly people, talking them into doing reverse mortgages on their house, either somehow stealing the actual full proceeds or partial proceeds. Like saying, I'm going to help you, grandma, go out and get you a reverse mortgage, but I'm going to take some of the money that you get. Ironically, what's interesting is, a reverse mortgage is not due until the person dies. And so, this could go on years before they're actually discovered or whatever. And so it's a kind of an ugly version of these frauds. Commercial real estate loan fraud, this has been around forever. That's when you basically hoodwink the lender by giving them a bunch of fake leases, saying that, I've got a bunch of tenants in a building. There's been some that I've seen where they literally had no tenants in the building. They were all just fake leases. But you're providing fake information to the lender and taking out commercial real estate loans. So those were all the mortgage fraud ones. I went ahead and threw in some more ones that we are familiar with and have been dealing with. Hijacking fraud. We've always had sort of hijacking fraud, fake assignments and fake foreclosures. We'll talk about those in a minute. But the new ones were, what we call entity hijacking, where someone comes in and takes over your LLC, goes in, acts like they're the owner of the LLC, has fake driver's license, either fake documents. The more you think about it, it's pretty easy to do, especially now we have AI. And my swing especially on AI, is it makes it easier and harder. And Katie's going to talk more about that at the end. But as far as preparing all these documents and all the fakeness of it, it's better. The other one that we've had over in Knoxville area in East Tennessee was people cloning their title companies. Okay, so you go and if you're XYZ title company, you change one little letter, one little dot or something in there, and then you create your own website. It looks just like it. You use either a different phone number, and all of a sudden you've got people thinking they're calling XYZ title company, and they're actually calling XYZ title company. So personally, if I were you, I would Google my own title company frequently. I Google myself frequently just to make sure. Anyway. So other things you can do is, check with the Secretary of State. If you can find the lawyer that drafted the LLC agreements and operating agreements and all that, compare your signatures. We're going to talk a lot about that here in a little while. Search in the company to see if you can see any ownership changes, and, know your people and your transaction as best you can. Okay. They hit on this. I forgot. Was it Stacy hit on POAs? I won't belabor that one. Y'all know, but POAs are another one of those things where you should say, hey, this could be fraud. It's very common. I'll tell you how common it is. Last week, we had one of our agents with two, luckily, fairly small frauds. We also have a program where you can identify with an app or whatever, and you all have other apps that do that. But the guy was using a power of attorney, and then he couldn't figure out how to use any of the apps for some reason. Okay. If they can't if they can't use the stuff, then it's probably fraud. Okay. But they didn't. They just went ahead with the transaction. They used the POA. And 5 months later, we find out that the gentleman who actually owns the property, lives in Texas. It's not him. So it's still happening, and POAs are still a problem. I was skeptical about Ron, but I'm a believer in real, if you have Ron, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it actually might be more reliable than actually, getting the driver's license and slapping it on the copier. But anyway, so if you can use Ron, I'm thinking probably is safer. This is funny. So like I've been doing these seminars for a while, and I always like to use rock bands and music bands. And so I gave this to the RAI people, or our folks at First American. And I usually get it back, and they've taken all of my little rock bands out. And I just get so mad, and I have to go back in and stick all the rock bands in. And then I have to live in fear that I'm going to get fired because I've put the Rolling Stones into one of my programs. And so it comes back this time. My Pearl Jam has turned to the definite tribute to Pearl Jam. And so that's a little fraudulent, really, but no, I'm just kidding. Apparently that's acceptable, and the real Pearl Jam that I had in there came back differently. So alive and well affidavits, I don't know if y'all use them, but they're a good little shore up in your closing documents. What they basically say is, okay, Mr. Attorney, in fact, sign this to say, one, that the person you're dealing with, you don't know that they're dead. Okay, because if you're dead, your power of attorney's dead. Okay. And then you don't know of any reason why it would be revoked or whatever. It doesn't do you any good with the true fraudsters, because he's going to sign that alive and well affidavit just as fast as he'll give you that fake POA. But for the good people, it will help you. Elder fraud, those are all sort of related with the one I was talking about earlier on the reverse mortgage fraud. But we see a lot, or I'm not going to say we see a lot of elder fraud, but whenever I see a transaction or someone presents it to me and the person is elderly, that's the first thing that I think of. I want to protect everybody, okay? But I really want to protect kids and old people, okay? Because they're defenseless, okay? If someone's stealing their money, most likely it ain't coming back, okay? Unless they've got title insurance or some other remedy. And so I'm very sensitive to those topics. This was one that someone sent me. Sometimes you can just sort of see it, and sometimes you don't, but it's your job, and hopefully to help us protect, these folks and make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of. So when I was doodling around through the FBI.gov public statements or whatever, this was just March of 26, okay? 1 month. I just copied the headlines out, but each one of those is an elder fraud, elderly scheme. Does that make sense? Sorry. 4 in 1 month that I found, okay? And they go on and on. And so, one, if you have older parents, protect them. And two, be careful with it. But it's very, very common. I'll say this too about the FBI. I was really thinking when I was going to click on there and I saw Kash Patel's face and all that, I was thinking, well, you know, they're probably not really doing that much. They're more active than I've ever seen. I mean, I bet there's 5 a week that they're prosecuting. Not all on mortgage fraud necessarily. They're, you know, dialed in on everything, but I was very pleasantly surprised that they're very, very active. So fake foreclosures, I assume everybody's heard this story, but did you know that someone tried to foreclose on Graceland in Memphis? Yeah, I mean, we made national news. Memphis has made national news for a lot of things, but this is one that was actually, I guess, better maybe, and maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, the lady tried to foreclose on Graceland, which to me still is just beyond insane, but kind of almost got away with it, but not really. Fake foreclosures, they go back as far back as these frauds have all gone. We had a fake foreclosure 20 years ago in East Tennessee, but basically it's not very hard to do if you think about it. And people are, a lot of times are fairly careless when they're examining title or on foreclosures. I mean, come up with a bunch of fake documents, fake mortgagee's deed, and then you're one step removed from it. You got fake people, but that's what happened on that. So Alta, I was reading the Alta letter this week on Monday. I think it came out. And sure enough, here we are in Arizona with a fake foreclosure that they sent information out about. So it definitely happens, and it's still going to happen. So you have to be careful. So from here, this is where you take over, isn't it, Katie? Okay. You don't want this one?
I do.
Oh, you want that? You don't want this.
Y'all can hear me, right? I wanted to say before we get into kind of some of the ways to minimize too, that just my own observation has been that I think a lot of people historically in Arkansas have felt like we're not really as much at risk as like California or New York or Nevada or someplace else, especially in the early 2000s when the market tanked and we kind of held on, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the country. And I think to some extent that's true, but also two things. Identity fraud is so easy now and it's all electronic that anybody's at risk. And also, I personally believe in, I think it's always kind of been this way, but especially in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, the state's getting a lot more visibility for whatever reason. I just was like looking the other day at like the 15-year anniversary for Crystal Bridges, and like Martha Stewart was there, and the owners of the Huffington Post, and like all these, you know, famous people were at their anniversary party. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, people are starting to know who we are. You know, the secret is out. So I do think, you know, if you Google wealthy areas of the country, Arkansas is going to begin to pop up in that, especially relatively speaking to the population that we have here. So there's a reason people want to move here and live here. And there's also a reason I think fraudsters are interested in taking from what they think is the big golden pot, you know, in our state. So don't think that just because you live in a smaller community, you know, that you're not at risk. I think we absolutely are. In some places, maybe more so because of a smaller community. And a lot of this is kind of depressing, to be perfectly honest, because the amount of work, I always feel like agents have always had an excellent experience level in catching, you know, shady, questionable things because we do so much diligence and we're so detailed in reviewing documents. Unfortunately, they're just so smart now, and there's just so much more AI, you know, generated photographs and images that are being used by fraudsters. It's really kind of depressing to see how much work we have to do to keep our job, you know, stable and our job safe. But to help kind of combat, we're going to talk a little bit. We actually, I think, do all the tables have these little things, or did we just? So we kind of put on the table one of these little light things. We'll talk about that and in a minute, just so you know, you can kind of play with that if you need something to keep you awake. How much time do we have, by the way? I don't have a watch on me. Okay. So we're going to, you know, the point is we're going to try to minimize all the risks that Darrin discussed, you know, date downing title. I know multiple counties, I think statewide even, we had a hack of our record systems as well. And that seems to continue. I mean, nobody's safe. Cities and counties are equally at risk. So obviously when those things happen, if you guys can let us know immediately, the first person to call, that's awesome, because we can kind of at least put some halts and some parameters around how to protect you guys. Sometimes you may assume that we know, but if we're not running title every day, then maybe we haven't caught it yet. So every literal minute helps, to let us know, keep us in the know. But also, I understand it allows for some delays and things like that, but just work with us and just know that, like, we want to be your partner. We want to help you and give you solutions and not make your life harder. And if you need us to come and review a document for you, or you just have a weird feeling, a bad gut feeling, that's totally legit. And nobody's going to think, what is this person doing? Colin, we're never going to feel like you're wasting our time. So that's what we're trying to do, is not freak you out, but also give you some resources to think about, some things to just go in your head. That's why we have the handout too, to be considering that and to open the door to communicate. You guys may see before us a new issue. So let me see if we're okay. So sometimes things change at the table, which honestly is pretty common. I mean, you see that a lot, but when you get a random invoice from a third party at the last minute, those are things to consider. Maybe there's some oddities there. Credits to buyers and sellers have always kind of been a risk. I think if you're in the closing business, everybody kind of red flags that, but just remembering to be aware of that. Unrecorded documents, 100%. That's definitely a concerning, risk that you need to be thinking about. And contract addendums, again, are all the time happening. I understand, but like the flip scenario, sometimes I used to see a lot at the last minute, oh, we got a new buyer, or there's an assignment fee being paid or something like that. Now, not only do you have to question whether that process is legal, but also, was there a fraudster involved? Is this person even a real human? So I feel for you guys, because we see it on the back end, but I don't have to do the closings every day, and it's very stressful, but I understand these are just, things to consider. A super rush. I preach this, I feel like every time I ever teach, I'm like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to say, hey, we need some more time. Like, the world isn't going to end. We're talking real estate. We're not talking about life or death. I understand somebody's got a moving van and they need to get into their home. Maybe you need to, I do think there's a key to making that work with your customers when you advise them as early as possible, hey, there might be an issue. But sometimes you can't help that. Things happen. And what I've always experienced is, 9 times out of 10, the people that are the most angry are the realtors. Sometimes the lenders, if their customer's mad, but most of the time it's the realtor. And my experience has always been, if you go to them and say, listen, these are real risks that I'm guessing you haven't been equipped with your training to handle. So if you want to not have to deal with your customer potentially coming to you later and saying, hey, some fraudster sold my house, or we're trying to help you, help your reputation, help them as well. We're not trying to be difficult. This is just, sometimes we need to just slow our roll a little bit and just kind of figure out who the players are even. And maybe not the POA is the answer. Maybe we can wait till they get back from vacation. Maybe there's something that was dropped in at the last second that doesn't sound legit, and we need to give our lawyer some time to do some research, or do a fraud name check on their name, something like that. So I find the more information you give the parties and the reason why you're asking, and as early as possible, the better it's pill it is to swallow, when they hear they've got a delay. Also, I wanted to say this earlier when Darrin was covering all the FBI cases. I find that to be a huge, fantastic resource to market yourself. Like, if you want to go meet with realtors and get more business, or lenders, and you say, hey, we're watching the FBI's website, here's some examples. You think it's crazy and it's not happening, and it's some Instagram AI, algorithm that's sending you all the fake stories. Here's the actual report from the FBI. And you can literally pull that any day of the week and get a new story, So I think those are really great, valuable tools for you to help secure relationships with your customers as well. So it can also be a marketing tool. It doesn't have to be just a negative thing. I'm always thinking in terms of marketing. What can you do to make your customer feel confident in what you know? And you don't have to be some like brilliant FBI attorney to be able to do that. They're not, the way that the FBI kind of paraphrases the stories, they're not complicated to understand, and they're exactly pulled out of what's last week's news. So it's a great resource. I highly recommend that. Checking IDs, this sounds so basic. But I mean, everybody needs, I feel like maybe every title company should have a training course like every year or quarter, even, with their closers to say, let's just rehash again. What are we doing to checking IDs? Gone are the days of just copying the ID and just making sure it's, not expired. Like you've got to look hard. Like you maybe need to look at the signature and think hard about like what's on the mortgage and what's on the deed. How can we compare those signatures? Does this picture look oddly perfect or AI generated? I don't know how to give you a tried and true black and white. Did I? Yeah. 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 Although I can say that I have them problem with my minor error. I could go on for days about why Social Security can't get my name right. But anyway, I can make an argument that if you get remarried, possibly they've messed up your name. But yes, most people, it's very odd and strange if they've misspelled their middle name, or they sign their name a different way. And then they say, oh, that's not correct. That's nuts. That doesn't make any sense. Use your comment. Sometimes you got to use your common sense and don't let people talk you into this crazy box where you're like, oh, anyway. But like you said, if it's questionable, ask for additional information, identification. Do you have a passport? What do you have? Do you have a couple credit cards or something that shows who you are? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. People get so afraid to ask, but this is the time to say, we understand you don't like that answer, but it's a different world than it was 5 years ago. If you've got grandfather trying to sell his property, it sure is not 1950, So I hate that for you, but trust me, I would feel better if I were you, knowing that my money was going to the right place and the right person was signing it. And yes, it's a hassle, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're like the most regulated people on the planet. We are so careful with your private information. You don't need to be worried about that. You just need to be grateful that we're here to protect you. Identifying risk coverage. So we at First American, I don't know if I can speak for the other underwriters in the room, but we're really like big fans of this Alta 34 because this just kind of helps you narrow down and identify what the risk is that you're taking, say, a unreleased judgment or a title dispute of some sort. Somebody died in the chain of title and we can't find who their heirs were, something like that. Sometimes, you forget. What I love about this endorsement above, other than the kind of limitations that it offers you as far as coverages, is also that it very clearly defines what you're insuring over. Like I think somebody was talking earlier this morning about not every lender loves, the insuring over a risk, but at least here they know what they're getting insurance for. Does everybody love it? No, I understand there's a lot of lenders that are like, no, we don't want that. We don't want to change our protocol. We'll work with you, but I'm just saying like this is kind of the gold standard. And I think that it's a great way to protect the company as far as what the actual liability is. When you get in as a title agent to crafting your own language as far as what your coverages are, please don't do that without asking for us. Like even we really shouldn't be doing that. Like that's a claims issue, So when you're trying to say, I think we're about done with the writing in the title policy. We'll affirmatively cover this, this, and this, But it hasn't been that long. It's been definitely in the last decade. I would say I was doing, those things. We were getting real creative with some of the language we were doing as agents. So just know that like we'll work with you. We'll make it happen. And I'm happy always to write you the specific language that you need, whether that's in your policy or here. But, if you ever want like a lesson on why we're issuing this endorsement or some kind of just like a paragraph or a couple sentences from me that says, here's what you pass to the lender, feel free to do that. I think everybody's always afraid to ask us to like give them that. Don't ever be scared for that. I want you to say that. I don't expect you to kind of make up the explanation of why we said no or why we said we need this endorsement. We'll be happy to do that. I'll talk to them. We'll write it out. We'll give you an email, whatever you need. So, we want to be your partner. We don't want to leave you in the dust, kind of explain everything that we've decided for you. Spotting fraud. We've got some case studies. Like I said, I kind of covered this already. Title exam is just really difficult. It's hard enough. I mean, when I used to try to train title agents how to do it, I spent like a year one time trying to write a manual on how to do title research. And I like gave up after like a year. Cause I was like, this book could go on for an eternity because first of all, I learned something new almost every month, even to this day, and I'm like pushing 27 years, I think in the business, 26 years. But, it doesn't matter. I think, all of us can say we learn something new all the time, but I think there are so many opportunities to kind of retrain. And that's why it's so important to go back to your title agents and your closers both and help them understand what the risks are and how they're evolving on a literal day-to-day basis. So here we've got some examples that we're going to kind of show you. They're just kind of funny. Like this one, okay, this one is, first of all, just nothing here really too notable, except for this is just an unimproved lot. I think we all know now, be wary of any sales of unimproved lots. Not saying everyone is a nightmare, but they're much more susceptible to fraud risks. The value, according to this assessor's report, is $102,000. Excuse me. And it's been on the market for 29 days. So we've got this purchase agreement for that property, and the purchase price is $30,001. So that's a little bit iffy. Like, Darrin was saying, the flips both directions are a little concerning, a little bit of a red flag. May not be the deal breaker. Maybe there's an explanation, but I mean, as a closer, if it were me, I would probably go to the realtor or the seller and say, is this a typo? Just want to make sure I understand what's going on. Are there defects? Is there a problem with the property that I need to be aware of? The property value just looks a little low compared to the sales price. Not saying anything. I know people don't want to hear that, but sometimes it's nice to just ask the questions and put it out there if you have some kind of red flags. Maybe you want to wait and review the whole file, but it's something to think about. Does it sound weird when you get these emails from the customer? This is the actual owner's address, and their email says, sales proceeds, I prefer wire, making payment by wire to me. There will not be any mishaps. Okay, maybe somebody wrote that. Sounds a little weird. Sounds a little bit like AI or some kind of foreign person maybe wrote the email. You don't know. Maybe it's not, it's very nice, but it doesn't sound like normal grammar. Again, not things that are black and white, bad or good, just things to kind of look at and consider as a whole in a big picture, just to note. Okay, this is a good one that I highly recommend, and it's hard to do, I understand, because we don't normally get driver's licenses. We used to not normally get driver's licenses until the back end. I also highly recommend asking for the driver's license on the front end, because this will clean that up. I don't know if y'all are doing that. I think some agents do and some agents don't. It probably depends on the market and if they'll cooperate. But again, another training tool for your realtors and your lenders to say, if you want me to warn you in advance if there's an issue or catch something, it's a lot easier to get it up front than it is for you to show me at the table and then us try to stop it. But like here, we just want to look at comparing the signature. I don't have my little pointer, but you can see the signature on the driver's license, and then his signature on the document that's recorded looks completely different. I don't need to be a handwriting expert to see that looks questionable for sure. And who changes their signature that dramatically? So now I have changed my signature from my full name to just a bunch of circles because I got really tired of signing it. But I got a lot of history of both signatures. So I think that's one thing, but it's something to consider and question. Just looking at this forged driver's license, to me, the picture looks a little odd. I don't know, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I feel like I look a lot at like Instagram posts and algorithms to try to see what's AI generated. Mostly because my 20-year-old daughter tells me I'm a moron. And when I send her something that's funny, she's like, that's not even real. Why are you so stupid? So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to get smarter at this. I don't know. I'm not very good at identifying fake videos, apparently. But, questionable, looks odd. Also, his date of birth is 1928. And last time I checked, he does not look that old. So I'm just saying, birth date would be a red flag, more than just if it's expired, but his birth date can be an indicator. Yeah, you can be off by 10 or 20 years, but this is like maybe 50. So maybe 30 years. Anyway, it's odd. Yeah, just looking at who you are, like, I think Darrin, I don't know if you mentioned this yet, but yeah, we've had that. I don't know if y'all all heard him, but these are all fake driver's license or passports that we've had presented to our company that we've caught. Another thing I wanted to say, I imagine every underwriter has this, some kind of database of what they, red flag builders, people's names, like anybody that they've run across through their closings. They send you a bulletin, to advise you, but I do have some customers, some agents that will call and say, hey, this person is just I heard some rumors about some issues with this company or something, or this name. Can you run it in your system and tell us if you see a fraud hit for that? We've all got like teams that do that. We all have to. So you're welcome to do that anytime. And it doesn't take us long to get that back. And the flip side, if you catch someone, please God, tell us. I don't care if we insured it, Fidelity insured, whoever insured it, send it to us so we can stop this, because the sooner we all get on a game plan together to work together, and tell your competitors, like, you guys are not just competitors, you're really partners in the market. Everybody's doing split closings. Everyone's working together. And I don't know why anyone would want to be subjected to has stolen wire. That is a nightmare. And once it's done, you're never going to see that money. Like the police are not going to find your money for you. And even your insurance is rarely going to pay. So, anything we can do to work together to kind of communicate as well as possible, I really, really recommend that you do that and try to be just a good steward of the information that we have. Okay, for spotting fake IDs, I've never done this. Darrin's done it, and he said it was easy. I was skeptical, but you did it. Called the state police and actually verified their name. I think that's fantastic. He said it was really easy.
That really happened. It was a small town, but I called the local police, and the lady goes, "Well, if you'll email me the driver's license, I'll look it up for you." So I don't think you could do it in Memphis, but yeah, that was true story.
Yeah, Little Rock or Bentonville or Fayetteville might say no, but it might be worth a try. I mean, and you might be able to establish a relationship with somebody there that could be valuable too if you do have a real issue. So I would imagine every larger city has a team of people that are in charge of that, but they can check and see if the driver's license is just the number with the person's name. That's not a big ask of them. The holograms, that's kind of what we were passing around, these little lights for, just the UV lights. Julie said they're also very useful for checking for bed bugs. There's none here from what we were told. She didn't, but
you can track deer with it too.
If you're willing to take that risk and stomach whatever your response is. But this is a good way to, shine the light on the driver's license. Everybody should probably have one by their copier when they're checking IDs, just to make sure that hologram is there. If some of them have a laser perforation, UV imagery, embossing, the quality of the laminate, that's good, especially for driver's license, but also passports. Sometimes I've seen fake passports that look very flimsy. And, if you've ever seen a real passport, it's a pretty heavy duty laminate kind of cardboard thing. Magnifying glasses, Darrin said this, and it's something that I've done as well. I just never thought about it. Like, a lot of times he'll do a snippet or a screenshot of two documents that you can't see, and then zoom in just that signature line or something like that. I used to do that with surveys a lot too. When people are like, that's not legible. And sometimes you can zoom it in with your computer. We have such advanced technology now with our computers, you can view better. Yeah.
Maybe everybody knows this. I didn't know this. I did the black light on my own driver's license. I didn't know on the back of Illinois license, but on the back of it, there is actually my picture again. You can't see it unless you put the
your picture.
And it's got my birthday next to it. I didn't know that it existed.
And I think a lot of states have different. I don't know. Does Arkansas do that too? I'm not sure. Yours is in Illinois, but I thought they had the little image. That's your face. Okay. Yeah. If you were running a bar, you would definitely know that, because I know most of the bar, the club guys will do that when they check, and I feel like we're just kind of behind the times. And here's kind of pictures of what we're talking about.
Anyway, you'll be very surprised. All your IDs, especially a passport. Well, and I'm amiss for not introducing Julie Angelico. She's our regional counsel. I should have said that. And we got Micah. Anyway,
she sees a lot more than we do. She's on a big scale.
So I'm probably in trouble, but I'm made up for it.
Well, you were talking about the facial recognition that they have here, and I know like ICE has a fingerprint thing where they can check your fingerprint and tell you if you were born in the US or based off your fingerprint. So maybe sometime in our lifetime we'll get there. I think that the technology is advancing and again, like as long as the FBI is prioritizing it and the federal government is taking a look at what the number of risks are, I think the likelihood of us being able to have some more options in the future are going to improve. But it's expensive. I get it. It's a lot. So for now, we're all just in the trenches together. This is the thing I think everybody kind of knows, and more now than ever, we're all kind of focusing on is executed documents. Y'all yell at me if we're getting close to time. Okay, nobody wants to run over on this. Again, like, when you're looking at the notary, the signature line, a previous document, a mortgage, sometimes you just get in your head, you're busy evaluating 15 deeds and you forget like, oh, maybe I need to be checking this. So again, send it to us. I'll be happy to like discuss with you guys. I know all of our underwriters will as well. If there's something that looks fishy or strange, but also pull mortgages, even if they don't have any outstanding mortgages, just to see the signatures. Who's the notary? Maybe the notary is from out of state, every single time or something that looks a little odd. Things like that, there's no title company involved in any of the deed transfer or something like that. This one is a good one too. I don't know if you guys do y'all know how to check whether a notary is valid in Arkansas? There's a website you can go to do that. So this is again, like kind of like the driver's license. Your name is usually not incorrect at the notary records. So like if you have a notary with a middle initial, like this guy, and it's not on your stamp, like I don't know if you've all applied for a notary, but they're very strict about how that is done. And the way that you sign and way you apply, it has to be exactly the way your name is written. And they make sure that your stamp has to match. If your stamp doesn't match your name in the notary records, that's a red flag for sure. Not saying it's impossible, but it's definitely something I would think twice about. I always look at the expiration date on the notary too, just to, you never know. This one expired in 25. So signatures don't match. We kind of covered that. In this case, it was like in variety of places. This is the like transfer tax certification, signature lines, multiple places on the deed and the mortgage. ALTA has some good suggestions as well to kind of look for, like contact the seller directly at an independently discovered and validated phone number. Again, front end information is key. If you can get their driver's license, have them come in or call you, get all of their personal information up front before you get too far into it. And don't just rely on what the realtor faxed you. Don't assume that what the realtor sending you is secure. For sure. Do not assume that. This is why I always am like, please, everybody go train your realtors that you need to be more careful about sharing information. I see personally, I saw as an agent, more problems with realtors having diverted funds because they don't know how to track,
I think so.
Wires and things like that than we do, than most other issues. Sending mail to the seller at the address listed, yeah, that's useful. It's a little slow for this day and age, but it's an option. I mean, depending on how early in the process you're evaluating. Ask the real estate agent if they have personal or verified knowledge of their identity. Did you meet them in person? Did you show them? Did you walk through their house? Did they meet you at their home, inside their home, or did you just get a phone call out of the blue? So something to it's just useful to have that information. And like Darrin said, take notes and put it in your file, because there might be 3 people touching your file that have different information. And by the time the closing gets there, she may see some little weird one-off thing and not think about it, but there's maybe a line of questions that have come up before that. So just training your staff to document every note, anything that's weird, even if it doesn't apply, you don't think it doesn't hurt to write the note in. If you're using a remote notary, be sure they're fully vetted, approved by your state. Use Ron. Please use Ron. I agree with Darrin. When it first came out, I was like, this is trash. I don't want to do this. But now I'm like, just kidding. It's actually fantastic. It's a great resource in this day and age. Title companies if you can arrange for an in-person notary, awesome. If I know that's a pain to like try to schedule something or have them go to a bank or another title company, but I mean, these days it's way less risky, I think. Ron's probably the best, but it's a better option than just bringing you some random thing that, I don't know. That's the one that sends me over the edge. This is a guy in Tennessee too, I think, right, Darren? We got a couple minutes. Okay. So real fast, this guy was 93, born in 1925, according to his obituary. Yet he prepared his own deed. The recording was sent to, I believe, the buyer. His signature is electronic. This is an approved vendor, but we still need to vet who that person was. And signatures are all over the place, look completely different, just strange. So, there's just a lot of questions. I think we kind of covered a lot of this. I want to wrap you guys up. There's more examples in here that we can kind of go through one-on-one if you have any questions, or you get back home and you feel like, hey, this is a weird one that maybe I don't understand why you're red flagging it. Ask us for sure, because I'll be happy to go over that. But, like I said, check the notary commission. Is the name the same on the deeds? Here, this is a really big indicator, prior deeds. Do y'all have any questions? I don't want to wrap up without at least giving you the opportunity. We could do this for like 8 hours, unfortunately. So, all right. Well, thank you guys.